Good afternoon. Getting right down to business here. We are doing it live and doing more at 4 weekday afternoons right after Guy Benson here on 790 KBC. And we do all this just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. And stay with us at 6 o'clock this evening for the Just Help One radio show and podcast presented by the Union Rescue Mission. I'll be on the air at 6 o'clock this evening and every Thursday evening at 6 with Mark Hood, the CEO of the Union Rescue Mission, which you can support at justhelpone.org. Right now, it's Mottek On Money, live on the air, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com, and your on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple iTunes, YouTube, and all of your favorite podcast platforms. Stocks moving lower today. In fact, ending sharply lower, especially the tech names. The NASDAQ posting its worst day in about a month. The S&P 500, believe it or not, turning negative for the year. Market got a bit jittery ahead of another reading on inflation, which we'll be getting tomorrow. Also, new concerns about President Trump's threats of new tariffs to start next week against Canada, Mexico, and China. The Dow coming in for a closing loss today of 194 points to 43,239. The S&P 500 down 94 at 5,861. And the NASDAQ tumbling more than 500 points at 18,544. The yield on the 10-year note is back to 4.28%. That's the one that impacts the fixed-rate mortgage rates. They've been coming down lately. We'll be watching another reading on inflation tomorrow, which could sway the markets. President Trump, meanwhile, says he plans to hit goods from China with a new 10% tariff. That's the latest announcement in the president's escalating trade fight. Imports from China already face taxes at the border of at least 10% after the president's tariff order that went into effect earlier this month. I'll discuss the latest China news with China expert Gordon Chang later this hour. He'll be joining me live, author of numerous books, including Plan Red, China's project to destroy America. He's on X at Gordon G. Chang. Those mortgage rates indeed moving lower. The average 30-year fix down to 6.76% on average, according to the latest survey from mortgage giant Freddie Mac. The average 15-year fix now down to 5.94%. The National Association of Realtors, meanwhile, reporting its pending home sales index fell to the lowest levels on record in January due to the double whammy of high mortgage rates and high home prices. Pending home sales were down 5.2% compared with a year ago. Looks like home prices continue to take higher. I discussed that with Dr. Selma Hepp, the chief economist at CoreLogic, on this program yesterday. You can bring up that program on the Mottek On Money podcast. NVIDIA having its worst post-earnings performance in more than 6 years. NVIDIA shares taking a tumble today. Pressure building as the day wore on NVIDIA. And NVIDIA shares did close lower, down more than $11, back to $120 and change. Closer to home, Virgin Galactic Holdings says it's making progress building its new Delta-class spacecraft, which it says will help unlock the company's future profitability. The space tourism company based in Orange County reported fourth quarter results. And it looks like Virgin Galactic had high expectations in its new Delta-class spacecraft. The stock pulling back slightly today, down to $3.83. Drama at L.A. City Hall. Former Los Angeles Fire Chief Kristen Crowley taking the extraordinary step today of appealing Mayor Bass's decision to fire her, in part for her performance during the catastrophic wildfires that destroyed much of the Pacific Palisades. The move coming less than a week after Mayor Bass ousted the fire chief. I'll discuss the latest drama at City Hall with the Honorable Dennis ZINE, former L.A. City Council member and retired LAPD sergeant. But first, here on Mottek On Money, I'm delighted to say we are joined now by a business leader who's taking on a leading role in the firestorm recovery efforts here in Los Angeles. Joining us live now is RAUL ANAYA, Bank of America president for Greater Los Angeles and president of business banking for B of A. RAUL ANAYA, thank you very much for coming to the line here this afternoon.
Frank, thank you for having me. It's great to be with you.
Wonderful to have you with us. It's been a while since we chatted behind live microphones. I know you've been here for decades. I know this area very, very well. Congratulations on taking on this tremendous role now, appointed recently by Bank of America's CEO Brian Moynihan to lead B of A's comprehensive wildfire response here in this current crisis. Tell us about what you'll be doing here now.
Yeah, Bank of America has been in L.A. now for over 110 years. It's a region that's very, very important to us. We've been part of the fabric of the community for so many years that Brian asked me a couple of weeks ago to step aside from leading a national business to helping the region rebuild. And it's not only helping our clients that have been impacted, but quite frankly, our employees that were impacted and just as importantly, the broader community. So I'm excited about the new opportunity. A lot of work to do, but I am looking forward to it. And the great thing is we've got so many different stakeholders in the community that are excited to help with the rebuild as well.
We just heard from the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation, the big LAEDC economic forecast event. Certainly the firestorm recovery front and center here now for the local economy. Will you be working closely with all the government agencies, various business groups like the LAEDC, the LA Chamber, and nonprofits and so forth?
Absolutely. I mean, this is a disaster of no magnitude. And so I've been spending a lot of time talking to various business leaders, civic leaders, different organizations like the LA Chamber, like the LAEDC, talking to the mayor frequently and her team, talking to LA County Supervisor Catherine Barger and her team, and a multitude of civic leaders. Again, we are all very, very focused on helping bring short-term as well as long-term solutions to help with the rebuild and then recovery of Los Angeles. So there's so much enthusiasm to get this going because we all love our city.
Certainly, and I see today the Southern California Leadership Council, co-chaired by Supervisor Barger and former Governor Davis and others, also announcing an important initiative for the recovery. So there are a lot of moving parts here, and certainly a lot to lead. Certainly, the financing all of this is going to play a critical role. What do you see already happening here as far as helping with the recovery?
Well, you've read about all the various groups that have formed because of the passion that we all have towards rebuilding our beautiful region, whether it's LA Rising, whether it's Department of Angels, and so forth. You've got the LA Chamber that also is very, very focused through the CEO Council, finding ways to help advise the mayor, to help advise LA County Supervisor Catherine Barger, and just ways to help advance what is complicated situations, not only with just the cleanup and recovery, but also the rebuild and quite frankly, the opportunity of reimagining our city so that something like this doesn't happen again in the future.
We've been talking since the days of the financial crisis when credit was a big issue, of course. Nowadays, mortgages are once again in focus. And in a situation like this, maybe you can help the folks out here where homes are completely destroyed. How are mortgages even handled? And what is your guidance for those who've experienced this heartbreaking, unthinkable loss of people losing their homes?
Well, we estimate that there's about 12,000 homes that were either partially damaged or destroyed. Our bankers, whether it's small business bankers or our relationship bankers that deal with our consumer and wealth management teams, been on the phone nonstop with all of our clients. So the advice would be to sit down, talk to your banker. All the banks have come out with client assistance programs, which allows them to forbear the payments, to help them, give them some monthly cash flow that otherwise would go towards the payment so that they can get their house in order, think about what they need. There's also opportunities for them to engage with just their insurance providers and understanding their rights and what they should be thinking about, because they've got a lot on their plate right now. But there are the bankers and insurance providers that are there willing and ready to help as they think about what the next steps are for them to rebuild on their home.
Live on the air with RAUL ANAYA, the president of Bank of America for Greater Los Angeles and the president of business banking for B of A, now leading the bank's fire recovery efforts here in Southern California. And, of course, on the business front, what about SBA loans and other specific loans to B of A that you can help businesses learn about here now?
Well, again, we've been having ongoing conversations with all of our clients of all sizes that have been impacted either directly or indirectly, talking to them about what they need, how we can help service them. At the end of the day, what our region is going to be needing is a public-private partnership with tremendous amounts of capital to rebuild two extraordinary communities, Altadena and the Pacific Palisades, as well as just rebuilding the whole ecosystem of small business. The LA Chamber came out and created a small business disaster recovery fund, which is basically grants that would be provided to small businesses impacted by the fires. And then I know they're working very closely with some CDFIs, which is basically community development financial institutions. When you couple the grant funds with the debt capital that's available, either through the CDFIs or through the banks, it's just a way to help rebuild the ecosystem, which, because as you know, the lifeline of our economy is small businesses.
Certainly, and will BofA be setting up special locations? Will it be going out into the communities specifically with special offices or setups there, or how can people best connect with you there?
Well, our bankers we got over 200 bankers focused on businesses, and I know they've been nonstop since the middle of January, talking to clients, engaging with our nonprofit partners, the Chamber, LAEDC, others like it, offering assistance, giving them options, and then, quite frankly, just listening to see how we can help them rebuild the business. So it's going to be very, very important that we continue to do that, and also introduce them to resources like the Chamber, like the LAEDC, as they think about rebuilding their company for the next several years.
And certainly the unthinkable has happened. The homeless situation has only gotten worse now, given the tremendous loss of so many homes and apartments in the firestorm. I know BofA has also been very philanthropic, right, supporting various charities, supporting the homeless. What about your efforts on that front?
Well, once the fire started, we announced $2 million that we provided to local charities. We gave $1 million to the American Red Cross to help those families impacted by the fires. We also gave $500,000 to the LA Food Bank. You mentioned Michael Flood. He and his organization continue to do great things in the community around food insecurity. And, of course, we provided a $500,000 grant to the LA Chamber to help jumpstart this small business disaster relief fund. So our leadership, fortunately, we had other LA-based companies also contribute, and I know we've got close to $3 million in that fund as well. I think it's important that all of us in the business community find ways to support the effort, and very, very pleased to see the long list of companies in LA that have contributed in various ways to the rebuilding of LA.
You're live with RAUL ANAYA, the president of Bank of America here in the greater Los Angeles. And what is the best way for businesses and individuals who've been impacted by all of this to connect directly with you and access the resources you've described here and are now coordinating?
Well, I know my name, phone number, and email is in the public domain, so certainly a phone call or an email to me, this is going to be something that all stakeholders of our community is going to be important, that we're all rowing in the same direction. And the great thing about it is I've seen how motivated and inspired so many of our stakeholders, whether it's philanthropy, whether it's pockets of the business community, different industries. Obviously, our elected officials are all working together to help reimagine LA and really build a stronger, safer region for us for years to come.
So much heartbreak at the moment, and of course the painful recovery process really just getting underway. How do you expect the rebuilding to play out, and what is your best estimate at this time for how long this all is going to take?
Well, it's going to be a multi-year effort. When you think about 12,000 homes that were damaged or destroyed in two communities, but again, the great thing is seeing the various stakeholders of our community coming together and finding ways to work together to help bring and move forward the rebuilding and, again, the reimagining of LA so that something like this doesn't happen again in the future.
And then, of course, getting prepared for the 2028 Olympic Games will also be a focus in the coming years. Is there anything else that you'd like to highlight at this point? Anything else that you'd like to mention to the business community and to our listeners here today?
Listen, we are in LA. It's the entrepreneurial capital of the country and of the world, in my opinion. We've got so many industries that were started here, and we have a real opportunity to reimagine our beautiful city because the entrepreneurial spirit is still there. We've got so many stakeholders very motivated to help with the cause of the rebuild for LA, and so I know we're all going to be working together on this multi-year road, but it's going to be a positive thing at the end of the tunnel here.
Thank you very much, RAUL ANAYA, for taking the call live with us here on the air this afternoon and on such an important moment in LA's history. And congratulations on taking on this enormous responsibility of leading the reconstruction and the financing effort here on behalf of Bank of America in this firestorm emergency. RAUL ANAYA, the Bank of America president for Greater Los Angeles, president of business banking for B of A. RAUL, all the best to you and your important work there. Thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Thank you, Frank. I look forward to coming on here periodically, giving you updates of how we're progressing forward.
Wonderful. Appreciate that very much. We'll keep an open line to you. And again, we wish everybody there all the very best. Let's get out to the freeways now. 790 KBC. 790 KBC welcomes Pink Martini coming to the Greek Theater August 23rd. Sounding good. Tickets on sale tomorrow, starting tomorrow at Ticketmaster.com. Right now, caller 9 wins at 1-888-795-2222. You can get a pair of tickets to the show. If you are caller number 9, call right now, 1-888-790-5222. The tickets furnished by Live Nation. Rough day for the stock market, as it turns out, with the early rally fizzling out. The Dow coming in for a closing loss of nearly 200 points, settling at 43,239. The S&P 500 down nearly 100, down 94 points at 5,861, the lowest now we've seen in 6 weeks. And the NASDAQ, big casualty of the day, down 531 points, worst day in about a month, and the NASDAQ is back down to 18,544. The yield in the 10-year note is back to 4.28%. That's the one that impacts the fixed-rate mortgage rates, and they indeed have come down recently, according to the latest survey from mortgage giant Freddie Mac. The price of gold pulling back today. Right now in after-hours trading, we're at $2,885 and change, down about $10. The VIX index, the volatility index, the so-called Wall Street Fear Index, taking a pop today, up 11%. Orange County-based Virgin Galactic shares pulling back 1 cent at $3.83 and moving higher, it looks like, in after-hours trading by about 4%. NVIDIA, the big casualty of the day here on the tech scene, the AI giant tumbling more than $11 at $120.15 at the close. We did get NVIDIA earnings after the bell yesterday. The big drop in NVIDIA today has thrown NVIDIA out of the $3 trillion market cap club after the stock pulled back more than 8% today. According to CNBC, NVIDIA shares slumped a day after the company reported earnings, pushing the chip maker's market cap below $3 trillion now. It's still the second most valuable U.S. tech company behind Apple and ahead of Microsoft. The chipmaker's shares plunged today following the quarterly earnings report, wiping about $273 billion in market value from NVIDIA and giving the company a market value of $2.94 trillion. So far this year, NVIDIA shares have lost about 10% of their value as the company faces investor concerns about export controls, tariffs, more efficient AI intelligence, artificial intelligence models, and an overall slowing pace of growth. NVIDIA took a hit when that DeepSeek story came out about a month ago. Even after this latest slide, NVIDIA is still worth 5 times more than it was 2 years ago at the start of the AI boom. It first hit a $3 trillion market cap valuation in June of 2024. NVIDIA reported results yesterday afternoon, as you heard on this program, topping analyst expectations pretty much across the board, with revenue jumping 78% from a year earlier to $39.33 billion. The company's data center revenue, which includes its market-leading graphics processors for AI workloads, soared 93% on an annual basis to nearly $36 billion. Once again, NVIDIA stock down $11.13 today to $120.15. Taking a look at the price of oil, looks like let's bring the price of oil up here, and then we'll get to the cryptos here, which have also seen a wild ride, of course. Oil right now down 21 cents at $70.14 a barrel. Let's bring up shares of Apple, down more than $3 today at $237.30. Turning now to the cryptos here. It's been a wild ride, of course, since Bitcoin hit a record high following President Trump's inauguration in January. Today we saw Bitcoin take another hit, but then rebound right now up about 1,200 at 84,642. Ethereum up 26 cents at 23.02 and change. And Doge at the moment at 20 cents. And now the latest news for you here on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KABC. Watching what's happening around the world. Let's take a look at what's happening with China now, with President Trump saying he planned to hit goods from China with a new 10% tariff. The latest shot in the president's steadily escalating trade fights. Imports from China already facing taxes at the border of at least 10% after the presidential tariff order that went into effect earlier this month. The president also said today he intended to move forward with threatened 25% tariffs on imports from Canada and Mexico, which are set to come into effect on the 4th of March. Looks like tensions rising once again between China and Taiwan. Let's bring in China expert Gordon Chang now, the author of numerous books, including his latest, Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. He's also on X at Gordon G. Chang. Gordon Chang, thank you very much for taking the call here. First, on the tariff news, give us your reaction to that.
I think it's good that President Trump is imposing an additional 10% on China. Remember, this is for fentanyl. The Chinese have not modified their behavior. They're still behind the fentanyl gangs, and that kills someplace like 70,000 Americans a year. So we obviously have to do something. And I actually don't think that this is going to cost the American consumer, because if we go back to 2018, when Trump imposed his first round of tariffs, that was 25%. China absorbed somewhere between 75 to 81% of the cost of those tariffs. China now has even more incentive to pick up the cost of these tariffs as well.
Any signs that this latest tariff move will pressure the Chinese to change their stance on enforcing the fentanyl flow coming to the United States? At one point, will the Chinese say uncle?
Well, I think the point is probably at a higher tariff rate than it is now. Xi Jinping has based his sole plan on rescuing the Chinese economy by exporting more. And he can't replace the U.S. market, which is the largest in the world. But I think that he needs to see a higher tariff rate before he stops fentanyl, because that's an integral part of his plan to weaken the United States. So it's core to what he wants to do.
All right. What is the state of the Chinese economy at the moment? We've been hearing about weakening for quite some time, and the price of oil now below $70 a barrel this week. And what's going on there?
Well, China's not growing at the 5.0% pace that they claim for 2024. It was more like zero. We don't know exactly how much, Frank, maybe a little bit above, maybe a little bit below, but almost all of the underlying indicators point to a very weak economy. And that means that the U.S., with a bigger economy, ours is more than a third the larger than theirs. Theirs is less than two-thirds the size of ours. We're growing at 2.3, as we heard today in the second reading. And I think that essentially we've got a really good economy, and the Chinese have a really bad one.
Are the Chinese still buying Iranian oil, which is something President Trump is also trying to clamp down on?
Yes, they still are. Last year and the year before that, China took about 90% of the exports of Iran's crude oil, and that means that China is essentially financing the October 7th attacks on Israel. And Iran could not have afforded to support the Houthi militia, Hezbollah, and Hamas were it not for China's purchases of oil.
And what do you make of the reports we're getting that there might be some peace deal at some point between Russia and Ukraine under President Trump?
I'll believe it when I see it.
What about China watching all these developments?
Well, China has a lot at stake because it supported Russia across the board. China, I think, is a little bit worried about President Trump wooing Russia away from Ukraine. But I also believe that the Chinese are confident in their relationship because Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin are very close. They're very close on a number of different levels, but especially because they see that the interests of their two regimes coincide. And they also believe that they've got the same enemy, which is the United States. So although the Chinese might get a little nervous when they see President Trump put the full court press on Moscow, I think eventually they'll believe that they can rescue their relationship with Putin.
On there live with Gordon G. Chang, China expert. His latest book, Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. He's on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Gordon G. Chang. And we're seeing a pickup of military activity around Taiwan. What are we to make of that?
Well, China is huffing and puffing, I believe. I don't believe that they intend to invade the main island of Taiwan, at least not to start hostilities that way. You know, if China were going to do something, if they felt that they were in a position to do so, they would have done it already. Really, what they're trying to do is intimidate not only Taiwan, but Taiwan's friends in the region and the United States. China's had, in its own mind, many causes to go to war with Taiwan. And so, this seizure of a Chinese ship is just the latest of them, but it's not doing it. So we have to assume right now that China is merely blustering and hoping that everybody else cowers. But I don't think that President Trump's going to do that, and I'm sure that President Lai of Taiwan is not going to do that either.
Taking a look at the latest bulletin from the Reuters news service, China's defense ministry said today the drills which had alarmed Taiwan off its coast were, quote, routine, and the island should stop complaining, as Taipei reported a surge in Chinese military activity, although no live fire exercises. According to this report, it said the Chinese military had set up a zone for shooting drills in the southwestern part of the Taiwan Strait off the key areas of a couple of islands there. Is there a potential flashpoint there?
Well, there's always a potential flashpoint, but I think we need to put this in the broader context, in that we also see the Chinese Navy right now with live fire drills in the water between Australia and New Zealand, the Tasman Sea. China seems to be taking on a lot of countries right now, and it's Australia, it's New Zealand, it's Taiwan, the Philippines, even Argentina. And so the one thing that we have to be concerned about is that because China's lashing out, something must be wrong in Beijing. We don't know exactly what, Frank, but something is not right.
All right. What about Japan and China? Also appear to be locking horns on some things now.
Well, they are. And we also see hostile Chinese activity around Japan. This is just, I think, a part of Xi Jinping taking on everybody at the same time. This is Mao Zedong foreign policy, and we know that Xi Jinping reveres the first leader of the People's Republic. So we're seeing a replay of Chinese foreign policy from the very beginning of the People's Republic. I think that this is, again, as I mentioned, intimidation tactics, but nonetheless, they wouldn't be engaging in these tactics unless something was wrong in Beijing.
Very interesting, and I know you follow the tech sector very closely, and China ripping off U.S. tech, and especially when it comes to AI. The NVIDIA stock was rattled when that DeepSeek story came out, and today NVIDIA stock got rattled again despite the better-than-expected earnings news. The DeepSeek story certainly still is in the background. How's this all played out here with DeepSeek, and was it as cheap as the Chinese said it was, and what's come out since then?
Yeah, their claims about DeepSeek, that it's made about its own software, is, I think, they're exaggerated. We know that. We also know that they were basically ripping off the technology of OpenAI, ChatGPT-4. They were trying to train their model with ChatGPT-4, which is a violation of OpenAI's terms of service. The thing about DeepSeek is that it acts more like a Chinese government lab than it does like a private business. And that's a real sign that things are wrong there. By the way, DeepSeek said its R2 model is going to come out well before its expected release date in early May, and that means we're going to have much more DeepSeek news in the very near future as it unveils its second version.
That's very interesting, and I think President Trump also considering more restrictions on giving China any additional computer chips that might help their AI efforts, right?
Yes, and that's a good thing because we should not be helping China's AI, which the military uses. Remember, Xi Jinping has this doctrine of military-civil fusion, which means the military has access to everything that any civilian institution, whether it's business, a think tank, or a government university. So we got to be concerned about any transfers to China because they will all end up in the People's Liberation Army.
We had a top tech analyst on this program 24 hours ago who made the point that America leads the world in AI right now, including China. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yes, because although DeepSeek did reveal some really impressive AI, and maybe better than ours, we know that they ripped us off. And we also know that their claims are false in the sense that they spent a lot more money and much more time in developing it. And I think that OpenAI and other American companies are going to reveal their new versions fairly soon. And we're going to see the U.S. retake the lead on AI, as we have the lead on other areas of tech.
Gordon Chang, author of numerous books, his latest, Plan Red, China's project to destroy America, on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Gordon G. Chang. Gordon Chang, always great to speak with you. Thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Well, thank you, Frank. I really appreciate it.
Likewise, thank you very much. And out to the freeways now, 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues. 790 KABC. Drama at Los Angeles City Hall with the former L.A. fire chief, Kristen Crowley, today appealing Mayor Bass's decision to fire her, in part for her performance during the catastrophic firestorms that destroyed much of the Pacific Palisades. And this is about a week after Mayor Bass ousted the fire chief. She ousted Chief Crowley, criticizing the former chief for her decision not to fully pre-deploy fire engines amid dire wind forecasts and her alleged refusal to participate in an after-action report on the devastating and deadly fire. Joining us live now, the Honorable Dennis ZINE, former Los Angeles City Council member and retired LAPD sergeant, still an LAPD reserve officer, by the way, with something like 56 years of service to the City of Angels. Dennis ZINE is on the line. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon, Frank. Pleasure to be with you.
All right, your reaction to this latest news, the top of the hour news, that the former LA fire chief is now appealing her dismissal.
Frank, the drama in Los Angeles continues. Another episode in the actions regarding political and public servants. In this particular case, I believe the fire chief is going to go to the council members, and if she gets enough support, then her appeal will be upheld. She'll remain as the fire chief. While she was not dismissed from the fire department, she was basically demoted to another position within the fire department. And what that means is that she'll have some command or another position without a command, but she'll continue receiving the salary and benefits. But this particular move really puts her, the fire chief, in combat with the mayor, because it's going to go before the council. And we know that certain council members publicly have stated that they didn't think the termination was appropriate. So what we see happening is continuing drama here in the City of the Angels with this situation, the fire chief going against the mayor and the council to decide which way it's going to be. And I remember years ago when Jimmy Hahn, the mayor, decided that Bernard Parks would not get a second term. Bernard Parks went before the council to appeal that. He lost. Later on, he became a city councilman. But this is not the first time the situation has taken place. But what we now have is the fire chief with the council against the mayor, so we'll see how that plays out. Again, the drama in Los Angeles continues. And I would say, as far as I know, when they look at budgets, many, many departments have cuts in budgets. And I have done some research on this. Clearly, what I have found is the fire department budget was cut, was approved by the council, but clearly they weren't receiving the compensation, equipment, et cetera, that they need to protect the people of Los Angeles and all the facilities.
On the line with the Honorable Dennis ZINE, former Los Angeles City Council member, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I understand the appeal would require the approval of 10 of 15 city council members. So the way things stack up, how do you think this will play out?
Well, I know some council members have already come out appealing in essence what the mayor has done. They thought it was inappropriate. I don't know how many are on that side, but what this will do is line up the mayor against the council, and in the middle will be the fire chief. And we know that some people are going to side one way or another, but if she can get those votes, then the fire chief will remain as chief, but that would be a shot against the mayor by those council members that would be ruling against the mayor, which would basically weaken her position as leader of the city of Los Angeles.
Which have already, of course, come under intense criticism, and now the rebuilding effort underway, and she's enlisted the help of Steve Soboroff. There was that story that he was going to be paid $500,000 for 3 months' work. Who had the idea that this was going to be a 3-month job, first of all?
Exactly. There's, as you turn the page, more and more interesting facts appear before the public. These are the public individuals who are going to be voting for the mayor to retain her position or to be a one-term mayor. So we'll see how that plays out. But clearly, it creates more drama and more interest, public interest, in this particular situation. The fire chief has options, and she's exercising those options. So basically, what this fire chief is going to do is pit the council against each other. And if she can get those 10 votes, she'll retain, which is really going to be a blow against the mayor as far as her support and her leadership in Los Angeles.
You've been out into the firestorm-ravaged areas there in the Palisades, as well as other parts of the city of Angels, and you're out there now, I believe. What is your what are your observations on how this is going out there?
Well, I feel for those folks, and I have personal friends that have lost homes, lost everything that they own. So I feel for what they have to go through now, trying to keep their families together and keep life going and find a place to live and et cetera, and dealing with insurance companies and the government and the cleanup. There's so many factors involved. It's really tragic what these people are going through. So we'll see how this all pans out. But surely many, many people have been victimized, many students where they don't have a place to go to school. I mean, it's tragedy. And I'm still a reserve with LAPD, and I was out there on the looting patrols. And sadly, people were looting properties. But it's a loss to many people. But those folks that lost everything that they owned and a roof over their head, that's a tragedy that's going to take years for them to recover. And then they'll deal with the insurance companies, and they'll deal with the environmental issues. And every day you turn around, something else is happening in a very stable environment that it used to be, which is no longer stable, that area, the Palisades, and the other areas that were impacted by the recent fires.
On the issue of law and order, certainly things have changed since the last election with Nathan Hochman now the district attorney, and changes also made to the law here in California. What is are the streets being given back to the people now?
Well, clearly our district attorney is doing a phenomenal job, and he's really taken the bull by the horns and doing what he needs to do. The Gascon era finally is gone, and we're getting back to law and order, and we hear a change in attitude. We find the public safer. We find law enforcement pleased with the change in leadership, and the general public is to benefit from this change of leadership of the district attorney's office. Nathan Hochman's done a phenomenal job. He'll continue doing that job. He's very professional. I give him high marks, very, very high marks. So the people of Los Angeles County, the 88 cities in this region, all the millions of people, they benefit from the position of our district attorney, Nathan Hochman.
The Honorable Dennis Zine. Thank you very much, Dennis Zine, for joining us live here. The former Los Angeles City Council member, longtime LAPD sergeant, retired, now still LAPD reserve officer. We salute your service to the City of Angels, Dennis Zine. Thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
My pleasure, Frank. Thank you, and to your wonderful listeners. Thank them, too.
Thank you very, very much. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang, and stay with me at 6 o'clock. I'll be on this evening for the Just Help One radio show and podcast presented by the Union Rescue Mission. I'll be on the air at 6 o'clock this evening and every Thursday evening at 6 with Mark Hood, the CEO of the Union Rescue Mission. We have a special show planned for you at 6 o'clock right here on 790 KBC.
Mic Drop. Hosted by former Navy SEAL Mike Ridlin. It's raw.
I've been shot at, blown up, you name it.
It's unfiltered.
You know, you go to the sound of the guns.
It's weird. I mean, I've had so many near-death experiences.
It's tough talk from the top minds in their field.
What if the units took a guy out back and shot him?
Bam, you're gone.
I would choose to do what frogmen do. That's what I chose, and it's what I would choose again.
I don't want you guys to cut any of this. Just leave it raw.
Mic Drop. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.